Welcome everyone to our seminar. We're going to get started in about 30 seconds. And before our formal presentation, we're actually going to take a moment of silence to recognize George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and really all of the Black lives that have been violently ended. And so let's take a moment of silence. Thank you. Next slide. So for those of you who haven't been part of these calls before, our Engage team, which includes myself, Trina Shanks, who is the Director of Community Engagement for the School of Social Work, Sonia Harb, Fatima Salman, Aisha Ghazi, our field student, Jamie Simmons, and Dominique Crump, who's been joining us for these calls to help with self-care. We have these calls almost every week, sometimes every other week, to be able to allow people to know about volunteer opportunities in the community, to learn what community partners are doing. And for those who aren't getting all their field hours while we're working remotely, it's also a way to supplement field hours. But in today, we're actually having this conversation today because it's really a moment in human rights history where there's been uprising against police brutality in defense of Black lives. And we want to highlight the important advocacy work that social workers and activists who are in this moment, leading this movement and leading some of the protests, and tell some ways that social workers who are interested can get involved. And we'd also like to hear from those of you participating about ways you've been involved and things you've been doing in this moment and how you're using your social work skills for advocacy. So it's my pleasure today to be able to introduce you guys to two activists who's been coordinating advocacy efforts around in defense of Black lives. So the first, well, not the first speaker, but one of our presenters will be Piper Carter. She's the founder of the organization We Found Hip Hop and a longtime racial and social justice advocate in Detroit. She is going to talk about her work in the movement for Black lives. And then I also will be able to introduce you to Trische Duckworth. She's a social worker and executive director and founder of Survivors Speaks. She will talk about her advocacy work in Washtenaw County. There'll be a short opportunity for questions and answers after both speakers so that you'll have a chance to interact with them directly if you have questions or want further information. So with that, I will introduce you, Trische. Why don't you go ahead and start talking about your work, who you are, what you've been doing, what you've learned about advocacy in this moment, and how students can help. I'm turning it over to you, Trische.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with you all. It's a very, very important time right now that we are all in. And as social workers, it's extremely important to rise to the level of advocacy and activism. And so we're excited. I'm a graduate of Eastern Michigan University for my bachelor's degree, and then went on to receive my master's degree at the University of Southern California in their first online cohort in class of 2014. And since that time, been volunteering with agencies. And then in 2018, February of 2018, we launched Survivors Speak. The notion or the motive or agenda behind Survivors Speak is nothing more than to ignite the voice of an individual or the community through mobilizing efforts, through the arts, community conversations, and other creative platforms. And it's to bring light to their voice, right? Because we're under the understanding now that our voice is the most important thing that we have. And when we put that with our vote and follow it through with accountability and holding legislators accountable, we can take things to the next level. But what I wanted to talk to you all about today was, as social workers, what does advocacy look like? And being quite honest, as a social worker getting into the field, I kind of battled about where I fit, right? I knew I had this big, radical, loud voice and didn't know, if that would fit into any particular agency. And so we just began to pound the pavement and work with agencies as we could, volunteering. And the thing about it is understanding exactly what activism means to social work, right? A lot of people think they're two separate things, but they're not. We, in our social work values, it clearly tells us that social workers are to challenge injustices. It says, and we all know it, it says social workers pursue social change, particularly with and on behalf of vulnerable and oppressed individuals and groups of people, right? So thinking about that, we see this movement going on now, but groups of people have been oppressed, right? And so in my opinion, our voices haven't been loud enough. And what I mean by that is I think sometimes we're just too nice when it comes to social injustices and how we fight against them. There's always a right way to do things. And when we're out, we're saying we're moving in the name of love, we're moving in the name of justice, we're moving in the name of peace. But we're standing for justice, and that means that no matter what, we're not going away until we see change. And so for me, when you enter into activism, there's a loss. You can lose friends, you can lose family who do not agree with your opinion. You could even lose your job, right? And another part of the in the code of ethics, it also tells us that when we see injustices that are within our own agencies, that we are supposed to follow the chain of command. But if things do not change, we're supposed to sound the alarm. I mean, it's clear about using your voice to fight for those that are oppressed. And so what does that look like? And a lot of people say, well, I am fighting, I come to work every day, I'm here for my clients, and we do not want to demean or disrespect anyone's work. So let me say that we're just saying that now we are in a time where our voices need to be united and then elevated. And when you think about what that means in bringing academia to this fight. And I believe us as social workers leading the way, right? I believe it is on us to mobilize the community and to help put the community in a position where they can use their own voices, right? Because it's about empowering, or not empowering, because empowerment comes from within, but it's about giving these platforms and making them available so people can use their voices. This has been very, very challenging, because when you think about speaking truth to power, it is not a comfortable thing to do. And sometimes it can mean you're standing alone, right? And sometimes it could mean that you would lose your job, or it could mean that you would lose some things. But if you don't do it, what's the cost? We've been seeing social injustices for so long, right? And so when we look at that, if we don't rise up, things will only get worse. But I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, because I'm telling you, I am so excited about the time that we're in. We are seeing people rise up from all ethnic groups. And it has been so beautiful to see what I say, my Caucasian brothers and sisters rising up, using their voices, understanding what privilege looks like, and really using that privilege to fight this fight so that we have equitable solutions for everyone at the table, right? And that has been so encouraging. And then also encouraging legislators, right? Because I think that we think that once we vote, and this is something everybody says, oh, go vote, use your vote, use your vote. Yes, use your vote. But that is only the beginning. That is only scratching the surface. We have to open the door when we vote and walk through to another level of accountability and making individuals accountable. So for me, if we're not doing that as social workers, to me, we're falling beneath the core values that were set in motion for us. It's hard, it is, but it's so worth it when you see the people using their voices and standing together, promoting unity. So that's been our mission. We actually started out fighting for justice for Shatina Gradiel. She had been what we called a felonious assault by an officer who, if I'm not sure if you all seen the news, she was hit in the head by an officer multiple times, and about 3-4 times. And so I was out doing senior shopping, because that's one thing that we've been doing through this COVID season, shopping for seniors, getting household supplies, cleaning supplies, tissue, and then we place it at the doorsteps with no contact delivery. And so I was out doing some senior shopping. I'd come home, put my bags in the middle of the floor, getting ready to bleach wipe everything down. And I got a call that said, go to Facebook. Went to Facebook, and I seen the video that a community member had filmed, and I was just horrified. I was horrified for more reasons than one. But in that moment, I didn't even think about it. It wasn't like, okay, we got to have a meeting to plan what we're going to do, right? Because sometimes I think that we can have so many meetings and it takes away from the meaning of what we're doing, right? And so I just took to Facebook and said, meet me at the sheriff's office. So everybody thinks like it's this big elaborate plan and, oh, how did you do this? I said, meet me at the sheriff's office. And then I showed up. That was it. Showed up with my bullhorn, showed up with some water. And that first day we had about, maybe about 20, 30 people. And we marched around in that parking lot and we chanted, and we beckoned the sheriff to come out, and the sheriff did actually wind up coming out after we sent word that I wasn't going to come back to a secret meeting. No, we're going to bring you out and have you talk to the community. And he did oblige and came out and talked to the community. And then from there, what do? You can't just walk away, and that's the thing, like, you got to keep that fire burning. So that next day we were right back, and the next day the crowd just grew. Individuals just began to just come out because they are hungry. Everybody's hungry for justice right now. If you have real human feelings and you see what's going on, you're hungry for justice. And so it just began to grow. And so I tell people all the time, this was not the Trische Duckworth show. This is not the Survivors Speak show. This is we the people rising up, using our voices. And I think that happens too sometimes, where people want to steer away from organizations because organizations make it about them. That's not what this movement is. We're a part of this movement. And we started the movement that day, but it has a voice of its own. And from there, we had medics to start to volunteer. Security started to volunteer. We had a sound man that came on to volunteer. I mean, it just began to grow. So I think too, sometimes that social workers may feel like, man, I really have this passion. I really want to do this, but I don't know. I feel like I'm alone. You're never alone. You're never alone. There's always someone that is like-minded that will link up with you and be ready to fight this fight. And I said this the other day in the crowd. You see what happened to Martin Luther King, when he began to strongly use his voice. You see what happened to Malcolm X and some of the other Black leaders, and not just Black leaders, some of our Caucasian leaders that were freedom fighters. You see what happened to them. And I think sometimes that distracts people from wanting to be a part, because you get a target on your back when you step out there. But when you mobilize the community, when you allow everyone to link up and stand together, they can't get us all. They cannot take us all down, right? And so we fight together. And so that's been a beautiful part of this. And then from there, adding in our legislators, right? Because we've been telling the crowd all week, if you don't see your legislators here, then they do not deserve our vote. If they don't see what's important to you and support you, then that person does not deserve that seat. we're changing the narrative as far as politics are concerned, right? We're trying to change the narrative to say that we, the people, are the real power. Yes, the legislator is the one that sees that's before everyone, but at the end of the day, they work for us. So what does that look like? When you have a job, you have a performance review, right? And that gauges how you're doing in your job. If you're not holding up to the agenda that is set forth by your employer, you're removed from that job. So us as social workers, I do believe that we can lead the way in that fight as well by having relationships with our legislators and then connecting the legislators with the people. We don't want to just see our legislators when it's time for voting. We want to see our legislators active at the table all the time. And I think that's something that we can do as social workers, is be the gap, bridge the gap between the community and between our legislators, because really we're all one. We're all we the people. And that's the most important thing. And then where do we go from here, right? Because a lot of people say, and I'll tell you, I used to say this all the time, all people do when they march is just lose weight. You know, you're just out there, you're sweating, and it doesn't do anything. That's not true. That's not true. That was me years ago, before all of this, you know, not really understanding the power of the people. We stayed out there every day until Mr. Gradiel and Mrs. Gradiel were released. We were there every day. And since that time, we have strategically put more protests in place. So we will be in Belleville at the Myers on Belleville Road on Friday at 4 o'clock. We will be we'll be in Taylor on the 16th, Tuesday the 16th at 4 o'clock. We'll be at the Diag Wednesday the 17th at 12 p.m. And we're going to march back to the prosecutor's office. We are continuing our efforts, but we're also taking steps to the next level. We are doing some community think tanks coming up. We're going to bring the community together and see what the community thinks needs to happen moving forward. We've also had conversations with some of our legislators about enacting some bills and putting some laws in place that will hold individuals accountable, and that will allow our legislators to understand that the voice of the people is very important, and that they need to listen to their constituents, you know. And also, I don't think people understand this, but the Washtenaw County Commissioners, they hold the purse strings for the entire county, right? So if we're wondering how the money is being dispersed across Washtenaw County, we have to look to these individuals. And I think what happens is a lot of times those meetings are not as full as they need to be. So we are going to bombard those meetings silently. And when it comes time for the community comment section, we're going to get up and we're going to begin to speak and allow our voices to be heard in a civilized manner. It is very important to influence and to be a part of these meetings because if we want wealth distributed equitably across Washtenaw County, these are the individuals who can do it. If we want to see, and everybody's so scared of the word defund because what it promotes, right? So if we want to, what Dr. Abdul El Sayed called it was refund, right? If we want to decrease the funding in the police, take away their ability to use military weapons on us, allow them to immerse themselves into the community, because we believe that if you police the community, you should live in the community, right? And then some of the money that is taken away from these individuals, it needs to be put back into the community, back into our disenfranchised communities, back into the health department, back into our education systems, right? And it has to be fair for everyone. But all of this could be influenced by our commissioners. So we're going to be at that commissioners meeting. It's July the 1st. And we will have that on our Facebook page, the actual time and the information is going to be via Zoom. And then the next month, when they are back live, we're going to go in and we're going to be there and stand together in solidarity. But we've got to get involved. I tell people all the time, we can't stand here to hold our legislators accountable the sheriff's department, and we don't hold ourselves accountable. We, as the people, we have dropped the ball. We've allowed these individuals to think that they were in control because all we do is vote, go home, and get busy with life. But we have to challenge ourselves to be at the table, to have a seat at the table every time. Because if we do that, then people will not put their own agenda in place. The agenda of the people will be at the forefront. And that's what this next movement is about. It's about one person. It isn't about an elected official. It is about we, the people, rising up, using our voices. It is about social workers understanding that we should be on the front lines, leading this movement with all of the knowledge, with all of the education. I believe that we can take things to the next level when we stand in solidarity with the community. It's our commission. It's a part of the code of ethics. It is what we're supposed to stand for. So if we're not standing for injustice loud and proud, we're doing a disservice to all of the education we've attained. We're doing a disservice to what we said that we would stand for through that code of ethics. I believe that people have been doing some great work, but I believe that we can take things a step further. And it's just going to take us coming together, doing what's right for the community, and really pushing things forward to the next level. So I don't want to be too long-winded because I could go on and on and on. So I will yield the floor back to you, Trina. Thank you so much, you all, for just allowing us to share from our hearts today.
Thank you so much, Trische. And there are actually some questions that are coming through. So are you prepared to answer a few?
Yes, yes.
So one question is just what inspires you? This is from Valerie Bonner. What inspires you to continue your advocacy work?
You know, what inspires me is understanding that this is why I was born. I think that we look at activism outside of the essence of our being, right? But each and every one of us were born for a specific reason. And it's up to us to find that reason. And now that my soul is awakened to my reason for being in this earth, can't go back. You know, the only thing I know how to do is fight. And I haven't always fought the right way, right? You know, it's taken time to learn how to when to speak out and when not, and when to move and when not, you know, but you just keep trying and you just stay there until you can. And I'll never say perfect yourself, because we should always be a work in progress, challenging ourselves to grow better every day. So that's what it was for me, just finding out why I'm here. And staying true to who I am, because that's important. Sometimes when you feel like you're standing alone, it's hard to stay true to who you are, but you got to stay true to who you are and move forward that way.
Thank you. Another question, how can non-Black people, or what can non-Black people do to join the movement in solidarity without being performative?
Okay, so we've been getting this a lot. My ally and good brother, I just met him right as we started to protest, Ethan Kettner. And people were saying, oh, he's running around like he's the white savior and all of this and that. And, you know, it's so irritating because I'll say this. We say that white silence equals violence. And then when our Caucasian brothers and sisters rise up and start to use their voices, then we accuse them of being saviors and this and that. What I'll say is this: we have to come together. We have to listen to our Black leaders, and then use our voices the way that we see. See, here's the thing: understanding privilege. We've been promoting this all week. It is going to be on our Caucasian brothers and sisters to end and to tackle white supremacy and racism in our policing agencies and institutional racism. I was even a victim or a survivor, of institutional racism myself right here in Washtenaw County, with no one that was willing to stand up for me. So we've got to move forward. We have to look at all of these systems and we have to tackle them together. There's no way to do it without each other. It's going to take professionals. It's going to take our Caucasian brothers and sisters. It's going to take our Black brothers and sisters. It's going to take every ethnic group. It's going to take the human race to humanize Black people, right? So that we can understand that, yes, Black lives do matter.
Wow, thank you so much. There were a few questions we had just as an engaged team that we want to ask of everyone. So I will ask those now. And then Dylan had 2 comments he wanted to make. So if you can be prepared, if you want to say something, please do. But the questions we had were just what coalitions, organizations, or campaigns are you working with that support your work? And how can social workers help? And of course, all of the dates and all of the websites that you've mentioned so far, if you give them to us, we'll share them with the people who attended today.
Okay, yes, so we have partnered with, I'd say more community members than more of groups. We have had support of, wow, I'm catching a brain freeze right here. We've had support of pastors, we've had support of legislators and different groups as well. We haven't really seen a lot of the social work movement at the table, and maybe they were there as individuals and we just didn't know it. But we would definitely love to see even the School of Social Work and some of our social work institutions begin to rise up and join us. You know, again, this is not the Trische Duckworth show. We definitely want to come together and make it a collaborative effort, because moving forward with Next Steps is going to take all of us. It's definitely going to take all of us. So.
Okay, Dylan, Cathro, if you're still on, we're going to unmute you if you want to make your comment or ask a question, because you made 2 comments in the Q&A. So Fatima, if you unmute him.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, thank you, Trish. I really appreciated your what you shared with us, particularly around your like engagement with the sheriff, right? As I said in my comments, you know, it struck me that what was really key, it seemed like, in your interaction with the sheriff was that you didn't let the sheriff control the narrative around the community organizing that you were doing, right, and holding them accountable. And I think in the last couple of weeks, just seeing a lot of like student engagement within the SSW as well, it's been really inspiring. And I think my comment was just really centered on if there are students on the call, I think one thing that they could really take away from what you're saying is that in any action that you're hoping garners movement and results in change, you have to control your own narrative and not work within the system that you're trying to change, right? So thank you. Yeah, thank you for letting me unmute.
Oh yeah, thank you for your comments. It's funny you should bring that up, because we've had so many groups, you know, to attack us like, oh, you're working with the police, and, you know, you've had the police at events. And it's like, okay, no, we're not asking the police permission for anything. This is our First Amendment right to protest, right? But one thing that we're promoting is peace, love, and justice. That is whoever wants to come to the table in truth, right? So it's got to be in truth. And unfortunately, the sheriff's office has not stood in truth. They have not denounced these barbaric behaviors of their officers. So while we wanted to allow the sheriff to address the community, how can we address the community when you will not denounce behaviors such as this? And so one of the things, like, I've been a huge advocate for domestic violence. I have seen where individuals, as far as women, they have scratched their husband fighting for them, you know, to defend themselves, or they bit their husband, but the husband beat the woman barbarically, and guess what? He still went to jail. So the narrative that they say that that Miss Grady L bit the officer and that condone this type of beating, we can't stand for that. You know, we hold our police officers to a higher standard, right? And so if they can't denounce the behavior, then how can they come to the table? We'll come to the table with anybody that's standing in truth and willing and ready to fight for change. But we're not about photo ops. You know, even though they've had us all over the camera, it's kind of uncomfortable for me, because it's not about that. It's about doing the work, right? And so if people are willing to come to the table, we don't care if you're police, we don't care who you are. But at the end of the day, we say that the police aren't going anywhere and we aren't either. So if we take back control, right, by putting the right people, voting the right people to the head of these policing agencies, and then making sure that they attack the unions and different things that are going on within these unions, because that's why we're not seeing the accountability. If we continue to apply that pressure together, we can see some change. And so that's where we stand with that. But no, we do not collaborate with the police. For all those that want to know, they have reached out, and the first day we shut the streets down. The second day they tried to get ahead of it, but we just do what we do and move in peace, love, and justice. I want to stress that, because we do not believe that you have to promote violence because violence is happening, right, by the police. We believe that we want to change the narrative and set the tone, but we don't knock other people's right to believe what they want and do what they think is best for them. We just hope that everybody stays safe. That's all.
Wow. Thank you so much, Trische. And people have been asking about your Facebook page and announcements. So again, if you give that to us, we'll pass it back out after this is done. So stay on with us, because there might be a little more conversation at the end. But right now, I'm going to pass the mic to Piper. And if you don't mind unmuting yourself and making your comments, Piper Carter.
Peace, everyone. I want to throw, my name's Piper Carter. I live in Detroit, Michigan. My pronouns are she and her. And I am a community organizer and artist, and I use arts and culture for most of my organizing. I want folks to throw into the chat, if they have access, or the books that people are currently reading about race, class, gender analysis. I'm interested to know what folks are reading right now, what source materials, and this could also just be like a resource for all of us. So please throw those in there. Any books you're reading about race, class, gender analysis, not separately, but that entire framework altogether, right? And particularly if it relates to racialized capitalism in particular. So thank you for that. So with that, and the list is starting to look good. Okay, so so with that, what I have done over the years is I'm very much, I grew up as a young person of the movement. I'll go out ahead and out myself. I'm a Gen Xer. I'm about 48 years old. I was born in 72. And so I am the exact age of hip hop. And also I come from a family of, it's mixed, some radical Black revolutionary communists, mixed with bourgeois Black Republicans, mixed with working class Democrat Teamsters. So you can imagine Thanksgiving conversations are very interesting and educational. And also I feel that's a very well-rounded understanding of a Black experience that I appreciate having. One of my uncles was a founding member of League of Revolutionary Black Workers, which if you've done any reading about beloved General Baker from Detroit, you'll know about that really powerful Black union organizing. I'm just giving you that as a framework, because if I say some stuff that might sound radical, don't be scared. It rolls off my tongue very easily because I was raised in this movement. So with that, I'm going to use some words. I talked about racialized capitalism. I think I saw the word white supremacy somewhere. I'm not sure. These are words that used to scare people, but nowadays it seems like they're trending topics. I'm going to talk a little bit about defunding police and investing in Black communities, reallocation of resources. And I know that that people in my family in particular, but people in the movement that have been fighting for reparations for decades now. And it seemed like we were getting super close, and it seems like we're getting closer. So I hope this is a moment that we can actually make this happen. I'm saying all of that because we're in a moment right now that is transformational. It's very powerful. I'm very excited by it. I'm excited by the uprisings. I know that people have been scared. but I'm very inspired by it. It gives me hope, and it gives me hope because as an activist, you do start to feel, or at least I sometimes feel, as though folks aren't listening. It sometimes feels as though folks are very comfortable in their jobs, in their position, with their things that they own, the comforts of life, to not have to think about the unhoused, to not have to think about anyone that doesn't have access, the same access that a person has. It is at this moment in time, we live in such a selfish society that it's a strange idea to think of others, to think of collectivism, to think of community. Those seem like strange ideas in this time, but in times before, this is how we survived, and this is who we were as people. I want to name that because there's been different conversations about defunding police, and I've seen a lot of scared talk about that. But let me break that down really simply. What it means is that over the past few decades or more, we've seen reallocation of resources from public funds that would go to things that in our society past, we thought that we should share these things. And this is where our tax dollars go, right? Funds that would go to the PPE that the hospitals would have needed that they didn't have while they were covering themselves up in garbage bags to help people during COVID when Detroit was a hot spot back in March and early April. As we look at the stark contrast of police officers who have been brandished with tanks and high grade military weaponry to protect property that has been brought into the city through gentrification, through, I'll call it violent gentrification over the last years. We've seen population inside of the city of Detroit transform, where housing was stolen from people through this mortgage crisis, right? There's a study that I want everyone to please look up. I'm gonna throw it in the chat. There's a website, it's called We the People of Detroit, right? .org. We the People of Detroit. Please go there. There's some beautiful research that they've done of these maps. And the research was done through Wayne State University research department, through We the People of Detroit, through some youth in the community, through Henry Ford Health Systems. And what they did is they looked at the foreclosures and in those areas, and they looked at where the water shutoffs, aggressive water shutoffs had happened, and then they looked at this where the schools had been closed. And you know what? Those were all the same people. It's a book. The research has been turned into a beautiful color-coded book. It's called Mapping the Water Crisis. Very important book, please. Very important research, very important book. And the reason I'm talking so much about capitalism and money and resources is because Black people were brought over here. America was, quote unquote, discovered through human exploitation and through human trafficking and through the purchasing and selling of human beings as a commodity. And America built its wealth on the backs of people who built this country up and are still continuing to be, thrown into cages, right? We still aren't really considered full human beings in this country. And not just in this country, right? Because it's not about, this is a global struggle, right? This struggle for capital, this struggle for resources, right? This has become a global issue, a global strife. And at this point where we are right now, what is wonderful is young people are waking up. Young people are woke, as y'all say, and are reading and researching, and this is very exciting to me. So some of the I'm just naming those things because that's where I like to keep the conversation is around what we're really talking about is balancing out what has happened, to a people over years, right? So the reason I wanted you to share these books about this race, class, gender analysis is because also too, I don't like to get stuck in these polarities, right? Um, all of us have some form of intersectionality, right? I mean, I'm Muslim, right? um I'm Black and Muslim, right? That's a thing. Like that's a thing, and in the Muslim community, we have our own very distinct issues that we need to deal with anti-Blackness and a lot of things in general. But this idea of commodification of human beings, this goes into devaluing labor, right? When we look at the disparities that we see are because people are desperate. People don't have the ability to take care of themselves. People don't have what they need to feed their families. People don't have access to education. People don't have access to transportation. People don't have access to have a healthy birth. People don't have access to fresh water that is not poisoned, like the city of, like the state of Flint poisoned the people in the city, the state of Michigan, right? The governor made a decision to transfer the water source, the fresh, pure water source of the Detroit River, where Flint and other municipalities get their fresh water from. And because of this bankruptcy that was created, the state of Michigan started putting these emergency managers in different cities. Detroit was one, Flint, Saginaw, Benton Harbor, but you'll notice all around, they're all Black cities. And Flint's water source was changed to the Flint River, which had been condemned. It had been scientifically condemned since the 50s. There's paperwork after paperwork after paperwork after report from scientists dating back all the way through the 50s to say, don't use this water. But they ignored that because of money, because they wanted to bottom line everything. And as a result, people have died. Children have permanent brain damage because that's what happens when children come in contact with that much lead. People's diseases are exacerbated. And to this very day that we're here right now, Flint does not have fresh water. The entire city of Flint is living off bottled water right now. And they've been living off bottled water since 2014. But yet and still, police departments have tanks, police departments have high grade weaponry, police departments have, increased budgets in the millions. And so when we talk about we're defunding police, we're not talking about, all chaos. People are afraid, right? Like, oh my God, what will I do without the police? But yet and still, where we have concentrations of police, we do not have less crime. And where we have less concentrations of police, we actually have less crime. Now there are other factors, because usually where you have less police, you have more what? Resources, like schools, like fresh water, right? Like parks, right? Like all these hospitals, health, all of these things that people need to have a better quality of life. So what we're talking about when we're talking about defunding police, what we're saying is we need to have better quality of life, better conditions for people. And the reason that when we look at city council budgets, the reason that they want more police is because they've degraded the quality of life, and people are running around trying to figure out how to survive. So that's the issues. Let me just tell you a little bit. I'm going to throw this link in the chat. I'm a member of like a bajillion dillion coalitions because why? I just love justice. This is what I do. I'm a member of it's a coalition of coalitions. It's called the Rising Majority. And we're saying the rising majority because in the past, this language of being a minority is a false narrative because the majority of the earth is people of color. So, you know, we talk about what's going to happen in the future with populations. You know, I'm not a mind reader. I do believe in a creator, so I'm not going to make assessment about what the creator is going to do with humankind. But what I will say is what we can see. And what we can see is that populations are becoming darker, becoming browner, and that's true. And so we call ourselves the rising majority because what we would like to do is have the numbers of the people that actually exist on earth reflect that we want the policies to reflect life-giving policies that impact everyone, right? So it's not, we're not swapping. We're not like, oh, you know, now we're on top. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that we want to have more life-affirming policies. Now with that, I'm going to use some language that might scare the bejesus out of some people, but I hope it doesn't. But we are with the rising majority. We're a Black and people of color led multiracial coalition with about 80 active organizations and a growing list of about 26,000 supporters. We're a combination of coalitions, local and national grassroots organizations, and unions. We oppose capitalism, white supremacy, patriarchy, and all forms of anti-Blackness. And so at this moment, well, the rising majority is actually powered by the movement for Black lives. And so let me throw the website for Movement for Black Lives in there really quickly. The link that I'm throwing in there right now is for all of you to check out. It's the Divest, Invest strategy. So check that out. That's on the website of the Movement for Black Lives. It pretty much explains what I just said, but it's written out, and you all are students, so I like to give you source materials so that you can go read things as students should do. I'm a student too. As you can see, I love research. That's something I do for fun, I know, but I do research for fun. Another thing that I'll do, I've been talking a lot, and just in case you're like, what was she talking about? That's I just threw in my website, and that's a page about me and my activism. So if you're like me and you're listening to somebody, but you want to read about them at the same time, you can check that link out. And then I'm also a member of a coalition that's here. Here for me means Detroit, Michigan. I'm not sure where you all are. And that one is Frontline Detroit. And Frontline Detroit is a coalition of environmental justice organizers and activists. We're mostly people of color, mostly Black. And we're here in the city of Detroit. Our focus is environmental justice, climate justice, and many of us are artists. Myself, I do photography and video, but then I also organize shows and things like that. And then I'm gonna just throw in here, I have my own organization. It's called We Found Hip Hop. And basically what I do with that is I center women who identify as hip hop artists, and I do like artist development. I had a no misogyny open mic that lasted for 5 years. But what I do with that as well is partner with different organizations to do some different relief efforts. Like we've done stuff for Houston when they had the hurricane, Puerto Rico. We've sent things to Yemen, you know, Palestine, So when, you know, we do different fundraisers, we do them kind of like in a telethon format where we can, you know, get folks more invested and interested in these issues through arts and culture, because, you know, you all are students, and so you all are really smart. You like to read, I'm sure. You like to look up research papers, you know. You know, thank you for sending those links. And that type of stuff is fun for you. But many people don't like to read, you know, and many people don't get their information from reading for, you know, non-judgmentally. It's just, you know, a lot of people would, you know, rather look at a video, would rather hear it in a song, you know, and that's a lot of people, right? And I think for me, the important thing is to, when we have, you know, these issues, when we want to raise awareness or we want to, you know, get people more involved, I think it's important to help people to want to be invested in the issue, right? And if we're trying to preach at people, or we're screaming at them, or we're, you know, things could be a bit scary for what I want to call people that are outside of activism, right? People that are outside of this. And it can be overwhelming, and people could be like, you know, I don't know what to do. But you know what people can often do? They can, you know, check out your event. Well, nowadays they have to attend online. Uh, so, you know, people can, you know, check out, you know, your literature. Like if you have a book or a booklet, you know, people want to see a video. You know, sometimes they want to get it in a music video. Sometimes, you know, it might be some poetry, you know, a dance performance. Like I've seen some really powerful stuff that we've had. When with Flint, we partnered with activists there, and when the city decided that they were going to, uh, you know, distribute the water filters without lead, they made people have show up with an ID. And I hope you all know, as social work students, many people do not have access to have an ID. It might not seem like a lot of people, but there's a lot of people, for whatever reason, they might be a returning citizen. They may, you know, have some issues trying to get some employment. You know, maybe they, you know, especially nowadays, they may have some issues with their status in terms of immigration. And I just think that, you know, with an issue like water, I mean, first of all, I fight heavily for immigrant rights in general, but first of all, no one should be cut off of water. You know, water is a human right. It's a basic human right. We're made of 70% water. The earth is made of 70% water. We need water. You can live like some days, or I've done 30 days without food, right? I know I'm crazy. I do these interesting fasts. Don't do that. But but we can't live without water, and we can't live without clean, fresh water. Now, first of all, water should be free because we need it, right? But they've decided that they've commodified this water, and so with that, we're like, water should be affordable. And by affordable, what we say is that, you know, everyone, we have a water affordability plan that we say, if everyone paid like 10%, then everyone would be paying into the system. And then if you make 100,000, or if you make 10,000, or if you make 1,000,000, whatever you make, then all of that, everyone has dignity to be able to pay into the system. But currently, as it stands, the way that things are set up in the city of Detroit and also in Flint, if people can't afford to pay their water bill, you know what happens? When they send you that cutoff notice, they send the Detroit Police Department and a police officer, along with Child Protective Services. They remove the child or children from the home, put them into juvenile detention center, aka kitty jail, and then they charge the parents that are living in poverty of neglect, abuse, and a bunch of other really nefarious charges. And so you're separating families, you're criminalizing people, you're putting people through this this criminalized system, you know, and as a parent, you're already fighting to be a good parent just in general. You know, how do you fight off a charge of abuse or neglect because you were poor and you didn't have enough money to pay your water bill, right? Where do you get the money from now to have an attorney? So this is how the system is now feeding these criminalizing policies. It's how folks are making decisions to feed people into the system, right? And if you're looking at, you know, let's jump over to education real quick. I'm giving you some real world examples that you might see when you guys graduate with your degrees in social work. And I really want you to do better than these people that are in there now. Looking at education, you know, they start the criminalization process as a child, okay? So what has happened, like when I was a kid, way back in my day, if I got into a little fight, somebody pissed me off and we get into a little fight and we go, I'm gonna fight you outside, and we go outside and the teacher or whoever broke it up, you know, that's pretty much it. You know, maybe you told your parents and you get in trouble, but you know what happens to children, Black children and brown children, when they get into a fight? They immediately start from preschool a criminal record on them. So they immediately start from preschool to have an actual criminal record. So let's say, you know, Raheem has a fight, he's 4 years old, and now that goes on his record. He's labeled aggressive, dangerous, and whatever else they put on there. He's got the fight. He has an assault charge now as like a 4-year-old in preschool. Advance to Raheem being 17, 18, and he's driving down the street. Police officer pulls him over. You know what's on his record? That he has an assault charge and he's aggressive. But that's been on his record since he's like 4 years old, right? And they put them in a category and they track you. They track you like that. And they put you on a track. They put a person on a track so that they're tracked in that way. That's another systemic way of, one, criminalizing people and feeding more people into the system through tracking, through criminalizing processes and policies that can be changed, because laws and policies can be changed. And hopefully you all are the people that are going to help do this and help us make this a better world. But imagine that the young Raheem, there's no counselor at Raheem's school. So whatever Raheem is dealing with, there's no one that's there that has any qualifications or specifications or certifications that can help him in any sort of therapeutic process. And so the solutions that folks have come up with is that criminalization is the answer. That's how we start this policing in communities. Now imagine, let's go over to more affluent communities or white communities. So you see, Black people and Black bodies historically have been labeled and considered as dangerous, as aggressive, as you know, when Black children are angry, Black children are not allowed. I got 2 more minutes. Okay. Black children are not allowed to be angry. Black people are not allowed to be angry, but we're all humans and we have these range of emotions. And anger is one of our emotions. And because these schools and things don't have counselors and they don't have budgets, and they've allocated these resources to police, and they put police in these schools as opposed to counselors, there's all these schools in Detroit that have no counselor, no nurse, you know, overcrowded, 1,500 children, but they have a plethora of police because they actually have a whole police unit that is housed inside the school. So I just named, you know, I'm going to wrap it up. I've just named some real world examples that use social work students that, you know, I'm going to be looking for you all to be our heroes. You know, when we see Captain America and we see Wonder Woman and all these, and the Black Panther, that's how I'm looking at you, the social work students. That's right. You know, I'm going to take a picture of all of your avatars right now that are on the Zoom, and you are the superheroes, but you're not superheroes like in the sense of like you're this one hero that's going to do it for everyone. You're a superhero in the sense that you fit into the quilt. You're a fabric that fits into the quilt of the bigger we that we're all creating. You're going to make these decisions, you're going to fight for these better policies, you're going to help inform these better decisions and these better policies, and you're going to help us create a better world, right? So I'm going to just put like a period right there. I put a bunch of resources, not a bunch, but I put a few in the chat, some things that and you know what? Go ahead and challenge me on any of the things that I'm, you know, sending to you. I want you to look those things up. I want you to research those things. I want you to use your critical thinking, you know, and let me go on ahead and just put my little social media in there because I want you to follow up. And if anyone is interested in getting in touch with me, please, please, please do, because we need many more soldiers for this work. And if you're interested definitely in policy or doing social media, or if you want to help deliver some water, or if you want to come out to any of the protests, or if you want to help keep us safe, or if you want to throw down on some research, let me know. We're always looking for people. We need more people in the fight. So thank you so much. And I guess I'm here for questions.
Thank you so much, Piper. If there's one or two questions, we'll allow them to come up, put them in the Q&A or in the chat. You've already talked about resources. You've already talked about organizations you partner with. You've already talked about how social workers can help. So you really answered all the questions we'd initially engaged. But I'll wait a few minutes to see if there are questions from the audience. But if not, hopefully people can also put things in the chat and then connect with you, because it sounds like you're not going anywhere. You're going to be doing this for a while. So I'll wait a second. I don't see any questions. I see a lot of thanks, a lot of gratitude, a lot of appreciation for the resources you shared and the information you've given. So with that, then we will thank both Trische and Piper for your wonderful words and inspiration and resources and example of advocacy in this time. And now I will pass it over to Jamie, who will talk about, she's our social work field intern, and she's gonna talk to us about what students have been doing and ways that we can help. So I'm passing it over to you, Jamie.
Thank you, Trina. And again, thank you so much, Trische and Piper. Hearing all the things that you both discussed today was amazing. It was definitely something for me, a student, a person that's going into this field and is currently doing this work and will always be doing this work throughout my lifetime. It was really, really great to hear everything that you both talked about. So for right now, we really want to hear what's going on with the students at the School of Social Work and the folks that's on this call that aren't students. Like, the question that we have to ask everyone is, how have you actively engaged in this moment? And what do you hope for the future that will come from this moment, or come from you personally, or the institutions that we're trying to break down or improve? And please feel free to put your questions in the and comments in the chat or in the Q&A box, and we will unmute you so you can kind of talk about some things that you're doing.
And as we're waiting for people to add to the chat and to answer these questions, I just want to say this webinar today is kind of exactly what we hope the engaged team can do. So one, it's about connecting students to volunteer opportunities, but it's also a chance for students to share with one another, people from the social work community to share with one another about what they are doing, what they like to do, what they need help with. So, so if you're not prepared to do it now, we will continue to have these opportunities. So I'm gonna shut up now, but if people have things to add to the chat or want to engage in this conversation with Jamie, this is your moment. And Piper and Trische, you can continue to add to the chat too.
And again, the question for everyone is, how have you actively been engaged in this moment? Have you been going to any protests in Washtenaw or Detroit? Have you traveled? I know there are a lot of students that went to Minneapolis and went to DC to be a part of those specific movements. And if there's anyone that's on the call that would like to talk about that, please feel free to let us know.
Okay, Jamie, some things been put in the chat. I don't know if you want to read them or if you want to ask them to speak, but there have been some comments.
I see that Chelsea Compton put in the chat that you're a part of Surge, and we can unmute you so you can talk about what exactly is Surge and what are you all trying to do right now?
Okay, there we go. I think it's working.
Okay.
So yeah, I've only been to 2 meetings. I want to say maybe there's only been 2 meetings, but we're still figuring out how it's even going to work. But we've split off into 3 committees so far, and we're basically not doing any calls to action ourselves. Everything that we're doing is trying to help propel the calls to action by POC-led groups that have already started organizing. And we're kind of just in the very beginning of stages of figuring out who's going to be our people to reach out to the POC-led groups and how we can best collaborate, and any support that we can give is kind of where we're at right now.
Thank you, Chelsea. And I also see that Rosalva has put in the chat that they've attended some protests, and maybe you would like to speak on your experiences there and how you came to know about those protests.
Sure. So I think it was last Saturday. So, you know, the young people are organizing, which is really wonderful to see as well. And somebody from my small group sent me a Facebook screenshot, and my sister and I went and joined. And it was a protest that was supported by the police station, which was by both Lincoln Park and Allen Park police stations. I believe there was an article that said around 600 folks joined the protest, and it was walking to the police stations, both the Allen Park police station and the Lincoln Park police station in Downriver, Michigan, and chanting, and a lot of people had signs, and even on Southfield Freeway on our way back, laying down on the ground and chanting, "I can't breathe." So there were drones as well, and then there was conversations at both police stations. So it was a wonderful opportunity to be out there and show solidarity as a person of color.
Well, thanks, Rosalva. I attended one of the protests in Ann Arbor, and it was a really great experience. So I appreciate you sharing that. I also see that Tony has put some things in the chat about being a social worker and a criminal justice advocate that I would love to hear you speak about. I'm going to unmute you right now. Are you there, Tony?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, great, thank you. So in the wake of COVID-19, you know, this pandemic, there is no way to socially distance yourself in prison. And, you know, my whole adult life, I've been dedicated to criminal justice reform. And as a formerly incarcerated person myself, this is an issue that is very dear to me. There are Black women who have served decades in prison who can be released and who are dying in prison, and this governor is ignoring it. She's not addressing it. She's not making a move. And there's like, all Black Lives Matter. Yeah, all Black Lives Matter. Black lives, people who are incarcerated still matter too. And so I've been involved, and we've been having conferences online. We've been going live online, trying to get more support. We have a team of people at MSU, social workers, who are writing reports to include and commutations to submit to the governor to get these women out. There's a team working on getting the men commuted, and there's a team working on getting the women commuted. And we're all just basically working together. And it's mostly just people who have been impacted by mass incarceration, and families of that have incarcerated loved ones. So I've been really busy with that, and the whole movement going on with the protesting and everything combined. We're hoping that the governor will be brave enough to do the right thing and let these people go. So, yeah.
Thank you for speaking on that, Tony. As a person who has a criminal justice degree from MSU and have the last 4 years really been focused and doing a lot of work around criminal justice reform, I definitely see the importance and know the importance of having this conversation and pushing for this advocacy work alongside all of our human rights work.
Yes. Thank you.
I see that Maribeth made a statement about experiences and what this presentation like meant to you today. So I'm gonna unmute you, Maribeth, to talk about that. Hello.
Hello, did that work?
Yes.
Okay, I had a little pop-up window. Yeah, I've been looking for work and feeling like Triche's call to follow the social work code of ethics, to stand up and be part of this movement, but I haven't been able to really find a way to plug in that feels doable from where I am financially. And it's just been a struggle to try to figure out, like, well, should I be on the streets? Should I, you know, I haven't found my place yet. So I've been signing petitions, and I've been trying to share some to my social media. And I just really appreciated hearing Trische speak and Piper speak about the interconnectedness. My bachelor's degree is in environmental studies, and my master's in social work was focused more on management and community organizing. So I'm looking for a way to put multiple passions together, multiple skill sets that I carry together in my work. And just grateful that this presentation showed me that elevating your voice matters, and elevating the voices of people of color matters, and that Black Lives Matter, and that it's part of all lives matter. And it's important to focus on what has been oppressed and what has been, like, what voices have not been heard in the conversation for centuries. And so I've just been grateful for the movement having such traction, and I'm grateful for this talk today. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think it's a really good transition to some things that Dominique was speaking about in the comment that she made. So I'm going to unmute you, Dominique, or you can unmute yourself, I believe.
Yes, hi. I'll unmute my video too, so that since I can. I think everything that I said is kind of all that I have to say. I think it's very easy when situations don't directly impact us to not think about them. And I think I count it as a curse and a blessing and a curse. But I told my parents growing up, I felt like I was cursed of being painfully aware of everything going on around me. And it makes me a good social worker. And it's also, you know, it can make you feel burnt out, which goes into my self-care thing that we'll be doing next. But what I'm hoping is that this moment makes all of us walk more mindfully. So those of us on this call are probably already doing that, and I'm hoping that people in the community who are not social workers, who are not doing jobs in social services, who are not in helping professions, are able to be more mindful of in how we interact with each other. Because what I said in my comment is it saddens me that it took most people, a lot of people, to watch a man lose his life for 9 minutes. That is what has catalyzed a lot of people to say, oh, this is important. But this has always been important. So I'm very glad, as it's already been said, so I'll echo that this is happening. And what we're asking for are basic human rights in 2020. So I really hope that we can just keep applying pressure, because these changes need to happen.
Thank you, Dominique. And I definitely echo all that you just shared. I know watching that video and having it reshared over and over on platforms is really hard, especially when you're trying to organize and mobilize things for the movement while like trying to focus on your own self-care and mental health. It can become really overwhelming. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And I think that would be a great transition into your self-care portion, if I can hand that off to you.
Of course. Did you all want to go over this first, or was that already?
Oh, yes. So through a lot of our listservs that's been shared through the School of Social Work, a lot of folks have been sharing a lot of ways you can get take action and donate. And this slide has some information about places that you can donate. One of the places that's on this slide is Reclaim the Block. This is an organization that focuses on diverting and defunding the police budget in Minneapolis, and really pushes towards moving those resources into more community-based organizations and places outside of the police department and police reform. Another place that you can donate is Project Fund Racial Justice. It's an online crowdfunding source to promote economic relief to organizations combating police brutality, racial injustice, and to assist protesters and small Black businesses. This is a really important fund that you can donate to because it was created by MSW student Sydney Arrington and incoming Master's in Public Health student Timberly Whitus, I'm sorry. So definitely look into those organizations and think about supporting. And if you are looking for some places to do action work and really get into the policy work and footwork that goes alongside of protests, please take a look at 482 Forward. It is a Detroit-wide education network that ensures equality education regardless of a child's socioeconomic status. And for those of us who do receive emails from the listservs through the School of Social Work, we all received an email from Dylan Cathro yesterday, a few days ago, about the right to education policy work that went through. So that's a really important organization to get involved in, as well as Detroit Justice Center that helps build a fair justice system. It's a nonprofit organization that helps with community legal services and equity and campaigns and bail funds as well. So those websites and Detroit Justice phone number is on this slide. And these slides can be found in our archives on our website, Engage website. And I will pass it over to you, Dominique, for self-care.
Thank you. We can go to the next slide. So something that I'm often thinking about is how we can pull everything that we've been talking about for self-care together. And one of the big things that I wanted to make sure I shared and was clear about is that self-care takes discipline. So when I was thinking about a way to say this that is nice and lands well, I was scrolling through social media and actually today saw the quote on the left, which says, "There is no easy way to be successful. The 10,000 hour rule is real. You only get out what you put in. Pick a craft and stick to it." And then I read a few articles about self-care, discipline as self-care, and I found the image on the right, which says discipline equals freedom. And so in some of the articles that I read, some of the key things that came out for me was that self-care is a discipline because it's not something that we just do once. So when you think about anything that someone tells you if you're trying to get healthier, is consistency is key. Eat right every day, work out a certain number of days a week for a certain amount of time, and not so much for vanity's sake or weight loss sake, but for health, right? So it's healthy to move. We should not be sitting in one place all day. And I think it can be very easy, especially in the roles that many of us have, to dig into the work, and then everything else goes to the wayside. And as I've said time and time again, we cannot pour from empty cups. So some of the other things that stood out from the readings that I read for this particular session is that self-care is what you do every day, every week, every month, month in and month out. It's taking care of yourself in a way that doesn't require you to indulge in order to restore balance. It's making the commitment to stay healthy and balanced as a regular practice. And something that I was thinking about just reflecting on my time is I was a much more effective human before I collected a lot on my plate. So graduate school is different than the choices, obviously, that you'll have to make with your schedule when you're working. And I noticed a huge shift in myself being able to be effective as a therapist because I had so much going on as a student and leading a student org and having field and having class and working 3 jobs. That was not healthy for me. And so coming into now as a graduate and having a lot more time to myself, I've definitely had to shift into making myself have that discipline to take better care of myself. So it's a both and. It's turning those strategies into a lifestyle so that we can sustain momentum to do our jobs with integrity and efficacy. And some of the strategies that we've discussed together on these calls that you can go back and look at are box breathing, meditation, the DBT skill called Please, and so much more. So next slide, please. So I was doing some reflecting. I said, are we conflating self-care? Are we avoiding and calling it self-care? Are we overindulging in behaviors and activities that aren't so helpful? So I'm fine with putting myself on Front Street. During the beginning of quarantine, I was eating a lot of pizza and ice cream. And so now that I've tried to get back into personal training, I can barely walk the stairs for 20 minutes. And that's something that I used to be able to do for an hour. And walking the stairs is really helpful for some of the back issues that I have and things like that. I was overindulging in things that weren't so helpful. I wasn't living within my values. I wasn't valuing myself enough to have discipline because I was coping in ways that I think I needed at the time. But now I am definitely, there's some repercussions to those actions. I think sometimes we also think that self-care has to cost a lot of money. So expensive spa days, massages, and things like that. Those are great ways to take care of ourselves. And those are not the only things. So self-care is also saying no to the thing that you know you don't want to do, even if someone's going to be angry with you. Putting limits on activities that aren't always helpful. For example, turning off the TV once you get to hour 17. Maybe you don't need that 18th hour of the TV show today. And then letting other people take care of themselves. So really reminding ourselves that we all have everything inside of us already. And we have to give people the opportunity to take care of themselves. So the last quote that I have on this for today is, when you truly care for yourself, exercising all the discipline that exercise all the discipline that requires, you are actually in a much stronger place to give of yourself to those around you. You will be a happier parent, a more grateful spouse, a fully engaged colleague. Those who take care of themselves have the energy to care for others joyfully, because that caregiving does not come at their own expense. And those who take care of themselves also have the energy to work with meaning and purpose toward a worthy goal, which means they are also the people most likely to make the world a better place for us all. So I'm sure with a lot of this, I'm preaching to the choir. And I think there are also things worth mentioning. So I hope that's helpful and speaks to someone. And I'll turn it back over to Trina.
Wow, thank you, Dominique. That was very helpful. So as we close, for those who do need these sessions for volunteer hours to go toward field, just know that we have a volunteer form. We have a volunteer opportunity list if there are things you're still looking for. And they'll be put in the chat, and they'll definitely be on our webpage, but they're also on the slide right now. We also have an archive of all the past engaged discussions that we've had, and this one will be added in the next day or so. But I'd really, and just remember that you can get field credit for these sessions. But really what I want to do now is look forward to you coming to next Thursday session. Next slide, please. We are really excited to have Tawana Petty. She's going to be here next week on June 18th. She's been a community organizer for years, but she's going to be talking next week about shifting the culture of anti-racist organizing. And so we hope that you will join us next week for her session. And with that, I think we are done for today. Thanks everyone for participating. Thank you, Trische and Piper, for your wonderful words, and even more so your wonderful work. And I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of the day and rest of the week. And hopefully this will inspire all of us to continue to work for anti-racist, anti-oppressive, social justice activities in whatever ways that we can in our communities and in the larger society. So again, thank you very much and have a wonderful day.